Alberta, where the G7 summit is continuing into its final day. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney have held a joint press conference at the G7 summit in Canada, where Carney announced a massive $1.46 billion of Canadian military aid package for Ukraine. Kyiv, meanwhile, revised its civilian death toll from a Russian strike down to 10 dead, as Zelensky urged fellow leaders for tougher sanctions and more defence support. Carney also vowed total solidarity with Ukraine, as he also unveiled further sanctions on Russia in an effort to impose maximum pressure on President Vladimir Putin over the ongoing war with Ukraine. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte also arrived at the summit following US President Donald Trump's early exit. Rutte praised Canada's commitment to NATO's 2% military spending target as the summit focused on the Israel-Iran conflict and the war in Ukraine. Trump, who left early amid Middle East tensions, called for Russia to be readmitted into the G7, a move the Kremlin supported while labelling the group useless. French President Emmanuel Macron claimed Trump left to broker a ceasefire deal between Israel and Iran, which Trump denied as publicity-seeking. The G7's final statement declared Iran must never have a nuclear weapon and called for a ceasefire in Gaza. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi also used his presence to strengthen India's diplomatic footing as the West grapples with internal rifts. Well, lots to discuss there, but that latest update coming from this conference after a bilateral meeting between Volodymyr Zelenskiy and Canadian leader Mark Carney. Joining us to discuss that and much more is Megha Sharma, our senior executive editor at NewsX World, who's joining us from Banff in Alberta, Canada, close to Kananaskis, where these talks are taking place. Megha, of course, with Donald Trump leaving the summit last night, there were questions raised about how support for Ukraine, both financially, militarily, and also potential sanctions on Russia would play out. But here, Mark Carney taking up that mantle. What more can you tell us?
Yes, I think what would have been ideal for the NATO nations and the G6 nations, and most particularly Ukraine, would have been United States of America coming out in an all-out support for Ukraine, particularly with regards to imposing more sanctions and freezing assets, as well as putting higher price caps on Russian oil. Now, that has obviously not happened. And I doubt that even if US President was present for the bilateral meeting with Volodymyr Zelenskiy, he would have accepted all these proposals that Zelensky would have put forth in front of him. Meanwhile, there have been efforts that have been continuous when we talk about the NATO nations as well as the rest of the G7 nations, who are coming out in full support of Ukraine against Russia by way of providing military support. These $2 billion that have been now announced by Mark Carney to provide military defense support. In fact, EU, we talk about France, Germany, they have spoken at length about how there is a need to further fortify the defense spending by NATO to provide financial and military support to Ukraine. But I think up until US does something major by way of its actions that are going to impact Russia negatively, I don't think there can be much that can be done by the remaining G6 nations. These funds that have been released by Mark Carney in an announcement that was made just a few moments ago. France has in the past few weeks also made a similar announcement of funds being diverted to Ukraine. Germany too has done that, also allowed for its military equipment arsenal, its ballistic missiles to be provided to Ukraine. So I think Russia pins its hopes on United States of America to have at least a balanced stand, if not biased towards Russia, And that's the only way that Russia can be brought to the negotiating table. And Trump definitely put that out in the open, that it was a massive mistake to remove Russia from G8, further reducing the G7's influence on Russia to negotiate deals. And he said the war would not have really happened if Russia continued to be part of G8. So it's a big disappointment for the G6 nations as well as the Ukrainian president. But I don't think Trump was even interested in talking about whether it is the Iran-Israel conflict, because that's the statement that he made right after he arrived here in Kananaskis. He did a media briefing right before the bilateral with Markani a day before yesterday, and I think he was amply clear. He said, I do not want to talk about Iran, Israel. I'm not going to be part of the team, the G7 team that is going to be signing on the joint statement. He even said that he hardly spoke about the Ukraine-Russia war. All his focus was, in fact, on striking trade deals, which he has done so with at least 3 countries. That's European Union, Canada, and United Kingdom. And if he had more time, if he had spent his day today here at Kananaskis, who knows, there would have been more such constructive talks, statements, maybe more deadlines that would have been announced between South Korea and America, maybe India, Brazil, Mexico. So yeah, those are lost opportunities for these countries. But nonetheless, I think the focus, I think Trump wanted to do what he did, finished off his bilaterals, attended the working session, and in wake of the situation that is quickly escalating by the hour, has gone back to his situation room to try to somehow bring an end to this war between Iran and Israel.
Absolutely, Megha Sharma, thank you ever so much for joining us. We'll stick